Is an overview of some tips regarding vegetable selection and timing, and also some great things that you can learn from reading a seed packet. Packet is a great place to go to if you're wanting to learn more information about what it is you'd like to grow. uh, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through all the content on this slide because I think you could just pause the video and then read the captions accordingly. But suffice to say that there's a ton of great information here. You want to pay attention to everything that's on the seed packet. It'll give you information about, how far apart the plants should be spaced, what kind of light requirements there are, how long it'll be until you can harvest it. That's what the days to maturity means. Whether or not you could save seed from it, if it's open pollinated. A ton of really important information for you to understand is going to be located right there on the seed packet for you. But one of the things that people are often wondering when they first get involved in gardening is, what should you grow? So, and actually, even if you're more of an experienced gardener, this is still a pretty pertinent question to be asking. But this is a list of my top 10 go-tos that I would recommend to people if they're getting involved in gardening. These are things that are just going to grow a little bit easier for people. They have more of a robust growth habit. They're not too picky about things. I mean, every vegetable has its own challenges, but these are things that are also going to produce a lot more food, which will kind of encourage you as you're getting involved in gardening, because it's fun to get a big harvest. So, and you'll notice too that I say hot peppers here, because hot peppers tend to be a little bit easier to grow than sweet peppers often are. So again, you could just kind of pause this slide, take a note of what's on this list, and I'd highly recommend that you try some of these vegetables when you're first getting started. Now that kind of moves on to the question of, if you are taking my advice to grow some of those easier vegetables, then when would you know to plant them? We also have another handout that you can access at the Garden Project website that's going to outline when exactly you would want to be planting all those. And you'll notice on a slide like this that it's a range of time. There's a little key that's indicating when you could start that plant indoors, like in a greenhouse, and when you would want to transplant it outside, or when you could plant that outdoors, or when you could expect to harvest it throughout the season. So again, those windows are all going to vary based off of when you do plant it. Another thing that I want to note about this slide right here is that this is just outlining all of the cool season crops. Now, cool season crops are those that don't mind a little bit of colder weather. So you can generally plant them, as you can see on the calendar here, earlier in the season. So you'll see that some of these plantings start as early as mid-April sometimes. And then they can go later. You can be expecting to harvest them pretty late into the season. You'll see some things go quite late, even into like October or even into the winter sometimes. So that's just something to note about cool season crops. Those differ from warm season crops, which are plants that are more sensitive to the cold. You'll see that the time span in which you can grow these is much narrower. So warm season stuff only wants to grow in the summertime. If it gets hit by colder temperatures, those plants are just going to kind of stop growing, or if they get hit by a frost, they might immediately die. So it's just important to understand that differentiation. And then speaking about the differentiation between warm and cold season crops, it's also a really handy tip to know that there are things that you can do to help extend the season, whether you're growing warm season or cold season crops. One of the things that you can do is you can insulate your beds by covering them with a blanket. The blanket that you might want to consider using is generally called floating row cover, or Agribond is another name for it. But if you were to Google that and search for that, you can find this at different garden stores. And you can put multiple layers on things if you need to really insulate it, just like you would for your own bed. You put on more blankets if you want to stay warmer. But the nice thing about a row cover like this is that it still lets light through. So even during the daytime, if it stays cold during the day, you can keep that on. But again, most people just are using row cover to insulate stuff on the shoulders this season, either in the spring or in the fall. But people will also use a protective cover like this sometimes to keep crops protected from bugs and pests too. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you next time.